Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up,
dealing with Pasifika culture, there sometimes is language barriers, but also cultural barriers.
An abuse survivor wants a Pasifika approach for redress also.
We, the people in the jungle living under those trees, we know what's happening, but we have needs also.
A PNG landowner is on a mission to save forests, and the Fiji Sevens rugby team are off to a great start at the Paris Olympics. A survivor of abuse in a faith-based institution wants a Pasifika-specific approach to redress for some survivors. The Royal Commission's findings show Pacific and Māori survivors had more physical violence inflicted on them than other ethnicities, and Pacific people were overrepresented in state-based care along with Māori, deaf, disabled and mentally distressed people. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Frances Tangaloa is a survivor of abuse in a faith-based institution and co-chairs the Survivor Experiences Board. She says she was impressed by the cross-party support for the final Royal Commission of Inquiry's report, but now she wants to see action.
Really, the first steps and the most important for now, I think, is the independent redress system. The Commission recommended that an independent redress system be set up years ago, and the government has been slow to act on that one.
Ms Tangaloa suffered sexual and emotional abuse between the age of 5 and 7 by a Marist brother during the 1970s who taught at Marist Brothers Intermediate School in Ponsonby. She says it's important the redress system is independent.
It just amazes me, but a survivor has to go back to the very institution where they've been abused to get any redress or support.
At least 200,000 people have been abused by state and faith-based institutions since 1950. The report found Pacific children, young people and adults in care endured higher levels of physical abuse than other ethnicities. Ms Tangaloa wants there to be a specific redress pathway for Pacific peoples.
There are just uniquenesses with dealing with Pasifika culture. There sometimes is language barriers, but also cultural barriers that we have to navigate. So there has to be a specific Pasifika pathway.
Commissioner Dr. Anaru Iruiti says Māori and Pasifika need to be trusted by the state to care and protect their own.
We heard a clear message from these communities about how for such a long time they have been not trusted essentially to care for their own, and how they wanted to have the proper supports from the state to be able to meet the needs of their communities.
Commissioner Paul Gibson says abuse was horrific, widespread and happened in all institutions.
It was systemic. Systems, people in high places, failed, weren't held accountable, and it still goes on today. We have to make it stop.
Ms Tangaloa hopes the public will help push for accountability.
We need the public to support us survivors and to support our Aotearoa to be a safer, more caring society by actioning these recommendations.
She says as a society we all play a role in making sure children are protected and not traumatised.
An Australian businessman says he wants to ensure Papua New Guinean landowners have the financial tools to save their forests. Rod Holden has been working with landowners representative Robert Mukoi in Miroramu in Madang province to try and arrive at a sustainable development model. Don Wiseman has more.
Robert Mukoi is striving to bring basic services to his region without destroying the surrounding rainforest. But he fears it will come down to letting the loggers in, because they're the only ones taking an interest in the resource. I asked him just what he's looking for.
I would like to see a road connection into the area, cutting across the 49,000 hectares. Then we could have access to basic government services, so we could easily have access to them. Right now, we don't have any road connection to the outside. When we have sick people, they walk or they are carried to the nearest road link. That's the river or the road. So we actually need a road connection to the outside world.
And having the forestry company come in, they would build a road and so on and so on.
Yes, because the government obviously cannot do it.
The alternatives are what? You've talked about natural capital, the natural capital that you have. Another means of convincing the world to help out developing countries if they want the forest saved. It's going to cost, essentially. Someone somewhere, organisations somewhere have got to somehow contribute or provide the income that would otherwise be provided by the logging company.
Yes. We know that there are donor agencies and there are funds out there in the world, and they've been talking about preserving the jungle for the good of mankind, because as we see, the world is dying slowly. We, the people in the jungle, living under those trees, we know what's happening, but we have needs also. What you have there in the outside world, we also have those needs. And we know that our government cannot provide this, so the alternative is to sell our trees to whoever can come and get it. At the same time, they should be able to give us basic infrastructures like aid posts for health services, schools, law and order. We have so many killings, so many rapes, fighting, so many things happening in the jungle belt because there is no road. How can we access? How can the government send in police or law and order to help? So the only way that we see that we can have access to these services is through logging.
The logging company, of course, is not going to be building these things. So what is going to allow all of these facilities to be built? Is the government going to step in with the money it earns? Is this your thinking?
I believe there are mechanisms in place in the FMA. The government will be collecting levies off those trees that are harvested. They'll be collecting tukina for health. They'll be collecting tukina for education, things like that. This money is stored in a trust account with the PNG Forest Authority. And when we need those money to build the infrastructures within the project area, we will apply for it and get it. But obviously in other areas, this doesn't happen. The landowners themselves tend to use that money to enrich themselves. So this is what I'm working to avoid in my area.
And you have talked about a new forest economy, and within that is this reference to natural capital. So how do you see this working?
I already have registered 91 ILGs. Those clans will have to accept this new forest economy concept, where the developers behind this program will go into the village and start counting everything, from the flora and fauna to the trees and plants, everything, so that we will know how much we are conserving, how much we are preserving, so that the developers behind this, they will have to give us what we need in order to survive. Instead of cutting down the trees, we preserve those and we are getting paid for that. That's the idea. But we have to have people at the back funding and supporting this to preserve those things in the forest.
Sustainability is the aim of Rod Holden. He has a business called Kuragaya, which aims to foster the development of environmental impact investments for institutional investors. He says they aim to deliver exponential systems change, which will achieve true global sustainability. Mr. Holden introduced Robert Mukoi to the concept of natural capital, which he says is essentially nature and something that could well provide the resources needed to build schools, hospitals and roads.
I said to Robert on the conversation, well, there's another alternative that's coming, and that's around natural capital. And so I explained natural capital accounting and the SIA framework that's come out of the UN. It was launched in March 21, and that's gradually going global. It's sort of designed to sit alongside the system of national accounts that spits out GDP numbers, but also factor in externalities, so the true cost of using our natural resources actually gets borne by the companies rather than society, and to probably a lesser extent factoring in the drawdown of natural resources. You know, a country like Australia is a quarry and we mine everything and we send it overseas, and that is going to run out sooner or later. So we need to take a long-term view of natural capital, which essentially is nature. We've got 6 different forms of capital in the world, like human capital, financial capital, intellectual capital. All of it is based on natural capital. So unless we can come up with a model that means that this long-term stewardship of natural capital must be the first principle of all human endeavour for us to have a truly sustainable planet.
In terms of Robert and his community, getting their schools, their hospital clinics, their roads, how does that become something that is going to work for him?
So essentially there is value in, if you look at it from a logging point of view, there's value in a tree standing in the forest, and a forester looks at that tree as far as the value of it cut down and sawn into timber and sold into a market. So there's already a value of that tree standing there, let alone the value of that tree and what it does for producing oxygen and filtering water and all the rest of it as part of a forest. So there's inherent value in natural capital as stands. So we, as a company, develop investment products based on that, the value of that tree standing there.
They could then borrow against that value.
Well, no, it's not a debt instrument. It's a financial instrument we sell into an OTC marketplace, which is an over-the-counter marketplace that provides revenue, and that revenue, a big chunk of that revenue goes back into the local community so that they can use that to build their own schools and hospitals and roads and infrastructure, etc.
Fiji have shown why they are double Olympic Sevens rugby champions on Thursday morning when they won their two pool matches against Uruguay and USA. The side have qualified for the quarterfinals at the Paris Olympics, joining Argentina, Australia, Ireland and New Zealand. But head coach Osia Kolinisau and captain Jerry Tuwai says they continue to focus on one game at a time, respecting all teams in the competition. Grace Filva'ai has the story.
Fiji kicked off their title defence with a statement 40-12 win over Uruguay and staged a festival of attacking, offloading rugby to beat USA 38-12.
Bursting through his Talatholo, gets the ball away to Bukayano. And how about this from Fiji, looking to close it out. The tackle from Grandidier, but the offload to Velawa. And that is about as good as it.
Tuwai says they will just keep going at it, one game at a time.
Anything can change, anything can happen. We'll just take one game at a time.
The double Olympic gold medalist says they cannot underestimate any team, as all are strong and wanting to win.
For us, we have a legacy to defend.
Coach Kolinisau says he was happy to see how the players have picked up on fitness, meeting the standards set and displaying the Fijian flair and style they wanted to play with.
We just set standards and we set values. We got the fitness right. We wanted to play our Fijian way, and it's a high tempo, high risk, and involves a lot of fitness to do that. And I think we introduced that, and the boys have adapted to it well, and we're starting to get back our flair that we're known for.
But the side will still need to take care of hosts, France, in their last pool game. The French obviously the favourites with the crowd, who cheered them on at a packed Stade de France.
Going to have a little dart himself this time, trying to get around the outside of Gonzalez, and he's going to do so. Is this the first score in sevens for Antoine Dupont? You betcha! The star man with a star turn.
France drew 12-all with the USA in their opening game before they defeated Uruguay 19-12. Unfortunately, they will need to beat Fiji to get into the quarterfinals. Other big results from day one of the Sevens rugby competition saw Ireland and New Zealand both winning 2 games in each Pool A. Terry Kennedy maintained his try-scoring record for Ireland as they beat South Africa 10-5 in a tense affair to kick off Pool A before they piled on the points against Japan in a comfortable 40-5 win. New Zealand claimed a 40-12 victory over Japan, then beat South Africa 17-5 in a physical encounter.
Africa fall again. It's New Zealand who take this hard-fought battle once more. Players pick themselves up off the floor. And we'll get home with New Zealand taking it out 17-5 over South Africa.
Australia and Argentina won both their matches as well in Pool B to set themselves up for the knockout phase. A close 21-14 victory over Samoa kicked off the competition for the Australians, who also later pipped Kenya 12-7. Argentina went 2-2 with a comfortable 31-12 win over Kenya and a good 28-12 victory over Samoa. Samoa looks likely to miss the top 8. Quarterfinals are set to be played on Friday New Zealand time, with the semi-finals and gold medal final on Sunday.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tofa Srifua.